Christians believe that Jesus was crucified at a place called Golgotha, outside the walls of Jerusalem on Good Friday.
They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land.
And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit.
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb.
3 days later, on Easter Sunday, he rose from the dead, leaving the tomb empty.
There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it.
The tomb is significant to Christians of all denominations because it is the site of Jesus' burial and of his resurrection. But whilst the Bible tells us about the events of Holy Week, after 2,000 years, we are less certain about where these events took place. In this program, the team of Real Discoveries asks you to join them in their quest. Search for the tomb of Jesus. When Simon arrived in Jerusalem at the very beginning of his search, he got into a conversation with a man in a cafe and told him about his journey. The man quickly volunteered to take him to the tomb of Jesus. But as he followed him down dark alleys, he asked himself if his guide was really a guide at all, and if he planned to rob him instead. Certainly, the man tried to lure him into souvenir shops. But eventually, he took him to where he wanted to go. But was it where he wanted to go? He soon realized that Jerusalem has two sites, each of which is considered by Bible scholars and archaeologists to be the true tomb of Jesus. But they can't both be the site. And why have the arguments about Jesus' tomb become so enmeshed with issues of doctrine and denominations? To begin at the beginning, there are two sites laying claim to the actual tomb of Jesus: the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which we shall look at first, and the Garden Tomb. The site where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands has been visited and venerated for longer than its rival, the tomb in the garden, and has all the authenticity of ancient tradition to bolster its claim. The site was discovered by the mother of an emperor, later to be declared Saint Helena, and her son Constantine the Great ordered the first church to be built. So, its credentials are impressive. In 313 AD, Constantine had declared Christianity the official state religion of the Roman Empire, and transformed what was still a minority sect into a religion that would dominate both the Western and Eastern empires. But over time, Christianity fractured into many denominations, each battling with the other for control of the shrine we call the Holy Sepulchre. Saint Helena, Constantine the Great's mother, newly converted to Christianity, set out from Rome from Palestine to find the site of both Jesus' crucifixion and his burial. The Romano-Greek historian Socrates Scholasticus, who wrote his ecclesiastical history less than a century later, tells us that Helena found not only the burial site, but also wood, nails, and fragments of the true cross. The site was covered by the building work ordered by the Emperor Hadrian after the Jewish revolt in AD 70, when the Temple of Solomon was destroyed. Two Muslim families were given the right to guard the church, one to hold the key and the other to guard the door. This tradition continues today in a line unbroken since Saladin ordered it so in 1192. As the Christian church fragmented, the Muslim Ottoman emperor gave each sect a zone of control, part of the church for which they were responsible, where they could celebrate their own liturgy. Roman Catholics, Greek Orthodox, Armenian Apostolic, Ethiopian Orthodox, and Coptic Christians were included. Now Jerusalem is a city in the state of Israel. This arrangement continues even today. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is heavy with tradition. It is the spiritual home of all the major Christian denominations, excepting Protestants. But is it the site of the tomb of Jesus, or simply tradition? Has the site simply had too much invested in it? Before we move on, let us take a closer look. Most of the present church was built in the 19th century. And although the first dome was built in the 4th century, the dome of the rotunda you see here dates only from 1870. Just inside the entrance, we can see the anointing stone where the women would have prepared Jesus' body for burial. To the west, or left, we have the rotunda of the Anastasis, and beneath that, the edicule of the Holy Sepulchre. Edicule in Latin means a small building, which describes it very well, as you can see. To the right, which is to the east, we can see a stairway that leads to Golgotha, or Calvary, where Jesus was crucified. One problem, as you can see here, is that the whole area has changed so much it's pretty well impossible to tell what this site was like 2,000 years ago. There's just so much tradition and uncertainty about this one. The group decided it was time to investigate the other site, the Garden Tomb. You can see here how very different this site is. There is no church, just a quiet and peaceful garden. The first thing we noticed was the absence of noise. Outside, the city continues its frenetic, bustling pace, but in here, just the most tranquil place you could ever imagine yourself to be. The quiet and sense of presence makes you want to believe this is the true site of Jesus' tomb. The guide is quietly authoritative, and we are all enthralled. When he leaves us alone, we contemplate and explore the place for ourselves. The first thing to notice is an absence of traditional church ceremony. It is as though we are stripping away the detritus of generations and getting back to the very early church, the days and months after Jesus' resurrection. But before we get carried away with the beauty of this place, let us examine its credentials. What evidence do we have that this is the tomb of Jesus? First of all, although there is evidence that early Christians believed this was the true site, it lay pretty well undiscovered until the middle of the 19th century. Until 1867, the site was a wasteland, and nothing was discovered until the Greek family owning the land decided to dig for water. They found a cave which they decided to excavate further to install a water cistern. First, they consulted an architect named Conrad Schick, who was also an amateur archaeologist, and when he inspected the site, he found evidence of a Jewish tomb dating from the 1st century. He counseled the family to leave the site alone, but by this time, considerable interest was building up in the city and beyond. One of the people who heard about the tomb was General Charles Gordon. Gordon was the archetypical Victorian military hero. He had fought in China, where he had made his name, and was often referred to as Chinese Gordon. As well as his military exploits, he was a devout Anglican Christian who spent much of his time in Palestine looking for biblical sites. As a result, the Garden Tomb, as we now call it, for many years was called Gordon's Tomb. And Gordon's reputation was only enhanced by his death in 1885 in Khartoum in the Sudan, besieged by the Islamic self-styled prophet, the Mahdi. These events were portrayed in the 1966 film Khartoum, with Laurence Olivier playing the Mahdi and Charlton Heston, Gordon. We mention Gordon's involvement in the discovery